it works. This is good. This is good. Microphone on. Hello, everybody. We're doing Grave Peril, part 2, second half of the book. So much is happening. I know KP Dubs, I'm growing in this world. It took me less than a minute to get the sound going. I was just having a chat with our kick-ass book chat crew. A lot happens in the second part of this book, which I'm excited to chat about. Daniel Savour, if you're still there, thank you so much for the follow. Rogam Russ, hello. That looks like a new name. Kate says we have audio and visual. What? Manta says, I love me some Dresden chat. Love hearing that. Lisa says a big hello. Usually Lisa's cooking in the kitchen while we're doing this, which is honestly sounds so fantastic. And I've got to cook dinner after this, so I'll be doing that. For those that don't know, Wednesdays I like chatting books, except the third Wednesday of the month where I chat about how to be a host. But every single month we decide on a book that we'll be covering, and the first and second Wednesday we cover the first half and then the second half consecutively like that. B-Rock Vandal says, hello, I'm J Buntrock, if anyone forgets. I forget all the time. So thank you for that reminder, B-Rock Vandal. Hello, J Buntrock. Aren't you getting married soon? Aren't you getting married this weekend? Aren't you getting married this weekend, J Buntrock? Unmute. I want to hear directly from the source, please. You're on Discord. J Buntrock.
No, I've been married for 12 years.
You've been married for 12 years. Who is it that's getting married this weekend? Darian? Someone said, they're like, well, I might not be able to do it. I'm getting married this weekend. And I was like, what? And then immediately decided it was J Buntrock, which was not the case at all. Good on you, Maude. But everyone, it's a black belt. It's black belt that's getting married. Where's black belt? Probably getting married. Sorry, J Buntrock. Your wife is usually chatting books alongside you, if I recall. I am trying to redeem myself. Your wife is also an avid book fan, J Buntrock? Yes, chat it in the comments. Love it. Right there. Right there. Whoop. Yes. Cool. Thank you, Kate, as well, for helping me out with that one. So we are chatting Grave Peril. We have initially done the first and second books in 2019 when it was just a Discord only thing. But now that Nerdist Book Club is only once a month instead of every single Wednesday, I decided to hijack the first 2 Wednesdays of the month to do a book chat instead of a book club. So for those that don't know, Nerdist's book for this month's book club being October, we went a little spooky. We are doing Final Girls Club. Final Girls Club. Final Girl. The Final Girl Support Group. Not quite. By Grady Hendricks. Narrated by Adrian King, if you're on Audible like I am. Not an ad. I wish they'd pay me because I can't shut the fuck up about it. So we'll be doing that one on the final Wednesday of this month. Let's get that date locked in before we get cracking. That'll be the 27th. Holy hell, next week I'm doing my Bright class on how to be a host. Just next week. Thierry says, I've already finished Nerdist Book Club homework. Not me, I haven't started, but did I read this book through twice? Yep, certainly did. Lisa says, no cooking today thanks to the crock pot. What happened? The crock pot busted, did it? That's annoying. Clever Girl says, I'm just starting that one, the Final Girls Support Club. Why won't you stick into my brain? Why is that so hard to... The Final Girls Support Group. Kate says, I haven't started yet either. I tend to read the Nerdist book closer to the day, as do I, so it's fresh on my mind. Truscon says, this is a good book. This is when Jim Butcher goes into his groove. Yes, it's true. Yes, he kind of really has good storytelling, and the language in this is great. It gets a little lusty, which we'll chat about. But I absolutely enjoyed this. Gory says, happy book chat. Lisa says, no, we made a crock pot meal overnight, so we didn't have to cook tonight. Oh, that's really clever. That's really clever. Oh, that's right. Adam's reading the wrong Harry Wizard book. Doing a reread of Harry Potter, which I have to do as well, but I like listening to it on audiobook because of Jim Dale, who can't say his R's and calls it Harry Potter, and that he has to say pocketed it, because every time Harry picks something up, he pockets it, and so Harry pocketed it. And apparently Jim Dale found that very, very hard to say, so JK wrote it in every book after that. You'll wonder why she can be a bit of a bitch. Anyway, Chris says vampires and fae, they are predators and lust is a lure. That is true, but we are also going from the point of view of a man. That was written in the early 2000s. As Australians call that is called the noughties, as in N-A-U-G-H-T, the noughties. Wait, what's noughts and crosses? Is that N-A-U-G-H-T or is that N-O-U-G-H-T? I'm going to have to find out. It's going to bother me. It's going to bother me if I don't. Noughts. It's N-O-U-G-H-T. The noughties is N-O. Apparently, America has not adapted or adopted to the noughties as a reference, a way to describe them. What do you call them? I'm opening that up to the chat. What do you call the early 2000s? Is it just the early 2000s?
I just call it the 00.
The 00.
Called the aughts.
Why would you call it the aughts when it can be called the noughties?
As Americans are English simplified.
Noughties. We've got the 80s, the 90s, and the noughties. It's great. It's great. Oh, there you go. You even wrote it. They call it the aughts. Yeah, well, they ought to change that. Oh. I better see a hashtag, exclamation mark pun in the chat. Better see an exclamation. I said I better see an exclamation pun in the chat for that. I better see an exclamation pun in the chat. Thank you, Adam. What do I have to do to get the pun recognition? I make the pun. It's not a good pun. It's painful. It hurts everyone. I make the face where it's it's aware that it's not good. And I look for the chat to get the pun point. And then I have to ask for it. It's devastating. KP Dub says it's painful, but he says it's punful. B-Rock Vandal says, I thought it was awful. We do need a pun emoji, Thierry. Gory, let's get onto it. Kate refuses to acknowledge puns. Have you been here? How have you lasted? How?
I didn't get that.
Oh,
Try again.
Shush, Siri, bugger off. Oh, it did. How exciting. Gory says I was delayed. Oh, okay. And Adam just says woof, which was an inside joke. Hey, let's get stuck into this book because a lot happens. First of all, because it's part 2, I'm going to go through the chat and ask everyone what they rate it out of 5. If you want to throw in a highlight and a low light, what you liked, what you didn't like, go for it. We'll do this in alphabetical order as always. Avery, I'm so sorry, but your name does start with an A. Well, what did you give Grave Peril out of 5?
3 out of 5.
Solid.
Yeah. Like, I enjoyed it, but kind of a lot of what we were talking about last week, the over descriptions of the women and how they're all perfect and everything, and how they all love
pert
Harry. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a bit much and made me not be able to rank it any higher than 3.
Yeah, I had a few eye rolls, that's for sure, reading some of the poor Justine. Like, yep.
Yeah.
3's good though. 3's good. Colleen, what did you give it out of 5?
Well, I gave it a 4. I have lower standards.
In life? Or with books?
No, with my expectations, I guess, having grown up in a time when women were treated so much as objects. It's not always as obvious to me. And there were some characters, like I liked the way he described the nurse that had no time for him.
Mm.
She was much more realistically described. And, you know, I raised sons, so I don't know. I guess I'm used to all the testosterone.
It is very testosterone heavy. And I kind of have to agree with you. I think I was so accustomed to the male gaze in media, you know, growing up on Star Wars, growing up on all of these sorts of movies where it is predominantly a male gaze, which is why I love reading female-read fantasy. And I guess the question that I kind of have is, are female authors kind of just as guilty of it in a lot of fantasy books where the women are gorgeous and desirable, but the men have rippling abs and so strong and muscular and desirable in that way? I kind of had a big think about it, and I thought the difference was between sexualization and appreciation. I think women just kind of appreciate it more. Yeah, Colleen says it's part of the fantasy. And I'm kind of, if I was going to write a book, they're all going to be gorgeous. Like, I don't know if I want realism because, you know, the opposite of realistic is fantasy in a way. So I kind of agree with that. Thank you, Colleen. Darian, a big hello to you.
Hey, good night. I think I would have rated this about 4.5 out of 5. It was hello?
4.5.
Yeah, kind of coming off of the first two books. This one really, you know, kind of just blew the door open for the world and the storytelling in a really good way for me. It just kind of it got me excited. So I appreciate that aspect of it. It just kind of it did a lot in just a single book, I think. Like, you know,
is this your first time reading through the series?
yeah, I started Dresden sometime like July last year, so I've been powering through the audiobooks. So I just finished Turncoat last week.
I just adore hearing you speak.
Thank you so much.
It's just great. It's just so it's different. It breaks my norm, which is just wonderful. So thank you. 4.5 out of 5 though. Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah, I mean, later on in the series, they have some 2 out of 5s, I would say, but
Yeah.
this one, just because of how much they accomplished with a single book, it reminds me of I don't know if you watched Supernatural.
Not really, no.
Oh no, season 3 of Supernatural was the one that really was the game changer for the entire series for me. And same thing with like Storm of Swords from A Song of Ice and Fire. That third book just blew everything wide open in a really good way.
Got it.
There's some really good, powerful third entries right there.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Bring in some facts as well. Thank you, Darian. Jay Buntrock,
Right.
aka B Rock Vandal. What are you giving this one out of 5?
Yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5. The same issues has been brought up, but also I didn't. I knocked it down for they pulled the James Bond, where they instead of killing
Oh, you just cut out instead of
Harry, they leave him alone in a cell so that he can have time to escape and get power.
Well, to be fair, they tried to feed on him, but he had poison in his blood.
Yeah. Well, they still could have just killed him, but
They
instead,
could have.
you
They
know,
could
leave
have
him alone
just.
in a cell, so.
I mean, you know what? It would have been a lot worse if it was, this is what we're going to do. We're going to leave you in here and da-da-da-da. And there's going to be a 40-second window for you to escape. But that won't happen because I'm going to, you know, how they reveal their entire plan because they think that they're going to die. At least that wasn't the case. But I do hear what you're saying with that one. It was a little bit too convenient. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, she didn't seem to be waiting for him when he escaped and goes up the stairs. She's there with everybody waiting for him.
Yeah, Bianca's an interesting one, especially if you have. It was book one. Book one. She made the appearance, didn't she?
Yeah.
Goodo. Thanks, Jay Buntrock. Lisa, out of 5, what you got? Charles P55. Thanks for the follow.
I think I'm going with 4
Yep.
out of 5. I think this is probably my favorite so far of the series. probably because I'm partial to vampire books. But I feel like they set up a lot of stuff probably for what's going to happen in the series to come. There's so much that happened, and I just feel like it was a lot of setup, and I like that. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it's going to go from there.
And there's even more and more world building, which is such a great thing for a series. Book 1, you learned about sort of dark magic. Book 2, you learned all about sort of werewolves and hexen wolves and, you know, that side of things, and how the police force was involved in all of that. And then now you're not only learning about vampires, but their infrastructure, their court system. Yeah, Thierry says there's so much set up in this one. A big hi to Eddie, who's just popped into the chat as well. Hello. Manta says, yeah, they wanted to torture him to respond to J. Bunt Rock's convenient prison time in there. They did hold him to torture him. They wanted to make it hurt and suffer. But yeah, they were leaving him in there conveniently for sure. Thank you, Lisa. Chris, did you want to jump in the chat and tell me what you give this one out of? Boom, you're all over it. 4 out of 5 from me. The books build from this point on. The introduction of characters is a little slapdash, but the world building is neat to see. So much setup. I love that you brought up the introduction of characters being a little slapdash. What a great way to say it. The introduction of Michael, who is a prominent character. They have years of history that we just don't really know about, and we kind of jump straight into that relationship that's already been pre-built, but we didn't really have that. And also to back that up, we never really knew about the Kravos situation. That was again a secondhand sort of like not appearance, but retelling through his dream. I actually, and one of my questions that I want to ask, and we'll get to it or we'll address it now, I don't know, but that would be in the first book when we had that dark magic, I kind of wish that this was an extension of something that had already happened that we as the reader had lived through with Harry, so that when they expand on it, we've done all the groundwork. For this particular instance, Kravos is someone who's so huge, but we're only hearing about him through memory and, a few months past. But they're talking about him like it's someone that we should really know about. And I'm like, well, we don't know about it unless you tell us about it. So really great feedback for Chris with that one. Did anyone else want to jump in about that? Did you have issues with like Kravos's backstory? He was kind of really, the scenario was introduced through a dream. Did that get confusing for anyone? Opening up mics. Yes, Avery.
Yeah, I thought that, like you said, I wish we had kind of seen that whole thing before. I wish that we had gotten that story first, because like when it was revealed that like it was Kravos the whole time, we were supposed to be shocked by that. But since I knew absolutely nothing about him, I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I guess so.
Yeah, and that's kind of falls into that convenient storytelling as well, where you're like, all right, there's not many pieces, but I don't really know, and you're trying to tie it together, and I'm just going to leave it for you to do it. Yay, you did it. I hear you on that one. What were you going to say, Jimmy?
Oh, I was just agreeing with Avery. She was pretty much spot on with that.
Yeah.
I like the back and forth with the sword thing. That's what was my highlighted thing. 4 out of 5.
Did you just say fortify? You cheeky bugger. We're cross-pollinating our content at the moment. Lovely for that feedback, Chris. I wonder though, Avery, now that you brought that up, would the book have been better and made more sense if we started the book out instead of the whole Agatha, oh my God, it's such a cliche name, Agatha Hagglethorne. Instead of having that whole setup, if we'd met Michael through that particular Kravos case, if the introduction is like they're outside, the SWAT's there, we've got the team, and that's how we're introduced to Michael, and it's to take down Kravos a few months before, and then things start playing out. Would that have been a better sort of layout? Jerry says, in this case, it wasn't Agatha all along. Well done. Twitching Jojo appreciated that one as well. Would you have preferred that structure in the book if the first sort of introduction was right at the beginning? We crack things off with Kravos. Yay, nay?
I would have. I think so. Yeah, if we would have started with that, that would, and yeah, introduced to Michael that way. That way, we kind of already knew a little bit of background, so that it wasn't like when Dresden understood why the nightmare was going after all these specific people. We weren't kind of left in the dark on that one. We would have already kind
Good
of had
pun.
an idea that those were the people.
Exclamation mark pun. Left in the dark. Kravos. Left in the dark about Kravos. That's brilliant. Sorry, Avery. Keep going. I'm rudely interrupted.
Yeah, but we would have already like had that bit of background. I think that it would have helped set the story up a lot better and would have helped those pieces kind of fall into place a little better and not felt like they were just kind of thrown in there.
The downside is that it would have been very formulaic in its procedural, opening battle, da-da-da-da, it comes back to the start to close it out. Personally, I don't mind that. I actually think that that's kind of fun and it ties it all together well. But you're right, we are more invested in what goes on because we were there. We were introduced to it. We were able to kind of understand the intricacies instead of it being a flashback that was kind of hijacked through a dream where we were just info dumped. Jay Buntrock. Oh, yes, Colleen.
Yeah, I kind of maybe have a minority view of that.
Bring it on.
I liked fitting the pieces together, and I wonder if we had started with that, if we wouldn't have already started making conclusions that that Butcher didn't want us to make until the end.
True. The pieces would have all been laid out and we wouldn't have been scratching our heads unless Kravos was like a summoner, and the assumption would have been that he was summoning. And so like he could have really ramped up the fact that in his, like, to try and get a hold of the magic book and his journals that they had tried to get the name in there, and then doing that spell when it's in Lydia's body and being like, saying the name 3 times and nothing working. That would have been a lot more of a mic drop moment where you're like, wait, this has to be Kravos's demon because he's a summoner. What's going on? And then the missing piece is something that Susan knows and Murphy knows, but he's been kept out of that because he's been so fixated on what's in front of him that he hasn't been open and available to finding the answer, which is that Kravos topped himself when he was in prison as a way to eternalize himself. So it could have worked. They could have done it. But I hear what you're saying with that one. If it was like, here's Kravos, da-da-da-da-da, what's happening? Who could it be? You're like, psst, it's obviously Kravos. Like, yeah. Good chat, though. I kind of love talking about how we can restructure an entire story now that we know the ending of it. I think that's really cool. B-Rock Vandal says, when they introduced Michael, I thought I missed something from book 2. He was introduced so quickly. Agree. And I think that by starting with Kravos, we would have had a much better introduction to Michael, because this would have been one of many things that they've done together. I mean, and also another 100 pages or so, 50 pages to do that. I'm down. I'd be okay for it to be a little longer to do that. Manta says, Jim Butcher always says that we only see Harry on his worst week of the year. Oh my Lord. It's so funny that you say that because, and I hope not to spoil future books, but this worst week of the year looks like no sleep, being broken down, signing bargains where his life is being taken from him, being so like depleted in so many ways. And I think we really got a feel for that in this book as well, when sleep was taken away from people and weaponized. I thought that was really, really cool as well. A little familiar, Freddy Krueger, but that's okay. There's a couple of references in this book that I felt were a nod to or borrowed from, or, and that was one of them, Freddy Krueger and the Nightmares. But still, that's cool. Yes?
I was reading an anthology of urban fantasy, And in one of the stories, they kind of made a reference that said most wizards don't advertise or don't let anyone know they're wizards. The only one I know working professionally is in Chicago, and he's not doing well.
Mm.
And I just really liked that they were kind of, they never mentioned Dresden, but you kind of knew the reference.
And he's got a reputation. Yeah. And it's funny because his reputation's brought up a few times, especially with Thomas Wraith. Where he's like, I know you. And he's like, oh, I hate that. I hate it when they know me and I don't know them. Yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic. Thank you for bringing that up. True Scorn says, I would not have minded a short story for an anthology about Kravos. Yeah. Michelle says it's interesting to try to have a main antagonist that's so low status that the author doesn't even bother with him. Oh, my lordy. That's very funny. And speaking of Michelle, it is your turn to tell us what you rate this book out of 5. Sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I certainly can.
I'm trying a new setup, so
It's
I don't.
crystal clear.
Okay, cool. I would give it like a 3.5 out of like 2 of 4. It's very, very, very entertaining. I just forgot how much women's boobs are, like the status of the boobs are like a barometer for the story.
I mean,
like anytime something happens, it's like, what's the closest female? What's her boob? What are her boobs doing? It was
registering a boob check. Yeah. I mean, as someone who's got them, I don't even recognize or know half the things. It's like, this is like the male gaze. It's like you just took something from our bodies away from us. It's like, or made some sort of awareness that we're not even privy to, you know?
Yeah, it was like this weird, spooky thermometer. I was like, this is a weird way to describe mood.
Is it tense? Are her nipples perky?
Oh,
okay, shit's going down. Shit's going down. Yeah. I agree.
It reminded me of like the inverse of the Star Wars quote from Harrison Ford where he's telling George Lucas, like, God, you can write this, George, but you can't say it, but the opposite. Like, I feel like if you saw like a lot of sexy stuff on scene, like on a movie or something, it would work. But when you write it like this, it just doesn't work.
Nope. Agree. It was very, I want to say disarming, but in a bad way. It was, yeah. It felt like a new measurement system that I wasn't aware.
It was just after every major action happened, and so like I realized like,
boob check!
I forgot about this.
What are the boobs doing? Agree completely. It's just so funny how it kind of, deflected a little bit the first read, but now that we've definitely brought it to attention, it was a little bit ridiculous. Oh, and what you said earlier, I really have to, it bears repeating. It's interesting to try to have a main antagonist that's so low status that the author doesn't even bother with him. I'd love to get your input on the whole Kravos situation then. Would you have liked to have seen a little bit more groundwork in place for this to make more sense, or for you to care a bit more?
I could kind of leave it. It didn't seem like the story was really about him, sort of pivoting off of what other people were saying about it being a setup for other stuff later. But I wrote in the comments, something that I think would have made the story tighter is if we had seen like Michael and Harry in Karen's office doing like a debrief, and it could be just super like a couple pages of what happened and like how Michael and Harry got there and all that kind of stuff, just to like set the scene kind of. I think that would have just made it a little tighter because it did feel like nobody cared about this villain.
Yeah. And then when it was like, it's the reveal, you're like, where? How did that? Okay. Yeah. You just kind of go along with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Kate wrote a comment here saying, I almost like that we didn't get the whole backstory of Michael. One of the strengths of this series is the world building. It makes you want to see more of Michael down the road and keep reading, but it works in the opposite way for Kravos. It works on a recurring character, not an enemy of the week. Very well said, Kate. I agree. We needed a little bit more about Kravos so that we could put the pin in it at the end, but dangle Michael as the carrot for the reader. I like that a lot. Chris says Jim writes time bomb plots, stories with a deadline before things go bad. Harry is always under the gun. Wizards need time to do their work, so you take that away. Fantastic observation. Because it is, you feel that like he just needs rest. He just needs a day. He needs to recharge. He's depleted. And it's like, nah, you don't get to do that. Really, really well said. Lisa says, I think if we started with that, we would not have had all the mystery and would have automatically thought it was him. So Lisa's in the same boat as Colleen, which is fantastic. Ember and Aaliyah, lovely to have you back, says, I agree that the Michael development, okay. But Kravos felt like I was forgetting something I should have known about. I think the fact that Kravos is a little similar to the events in the first book doesn't help. Agree. I thought that's who Kravos was at the start. And then it was like, no, something else kind of similar happened to that. And you're like, yeah, I was getting my wires crossed a little bit. Thierry says the police holding information from Dresden, calm as a bitch. Thierry also follows up with, in all caps, spoilers. Avery says, oh, good point. He could have used Victor cells and had the same outcome. Yeah. And we spent a whole book doing that, so it would make sense to revisit it instead of it being a whole new entity that we just don't really know much about. Michelle said it could have simply started with Michael and Harry doing a debrief with Karen after the Kravos incident and have been super zippy intro to provide a tiny taste of info. Gori says, that's what I worry about. That's what I worry about my novels, that I might unknowingly take inspiration. Oh, got it, from all the other books and worlds that I love. My brother is writing a book right now, and I'm like, can you please read Wheel of Time? Because this part of your book is kind of the same. And he goes, I know that I've taken from Lord of the Rings, Mass Effect, Harry Potter, all of these books. And he goes, so if there's more that it feels familiar to, great, because it's an amalgamation of all of them. We're doing some great boob puns, which is great. B-Rock Vandal said it's a boob plot device. Jimmy says boob peril instead of grave peril. Thierry says make it a drinking game. Kate just said, it felt a little slimy. Lisa followed up about the drinking game saying we would all die. And that's not a good way to go. That's not a good way to go. Oh. Gori says, sometimes I truly hate and feel uncomfortable and vulnerable when men write women. It can be so predatory and sexualized. Agree. In fact, Kate mentioned something earlier. The difference between the male gaze and the female gaze is how their sex scenes are written. Obviously, one is more of an object and a goal, and the other one is an experience and sort of like using all your senses. So sight, sound, touch, smell, like all of that kind of like, it's more of an experience that you are able to give and receive upon, when the other one is just like, and they did it. Yeah, cool. You're like, oh, that's not fantastic. So that's interesting. Kate says, I also thought that Kravos was the guy from the first book. Damn, it should have just been Victor Sells. Because would it have changed the book very much? Did Victor die at the end of the first book? Did he die? There were scorpions. There were
Victor Sell
Harry
did.
shoot him.
Oh, what was that? I'll start with you, Thierry, and then Darren, go to you.
Yeah, Victor Sell did die. It's the couple that survived.
I mean, he still could have turned into the ghost that way. What were you going to say, Darren?
I was just remembering, I think Harry shot him. It was like the Indiana Jones moment, big magical showdown, and bang, bang.
Bang, bang. So then we would have been in the same place since Kravos also died. Yep. The only thing would have been fitting Michael in. Because he wasn't there. Good point, Avery. You have just absolutely shone a very bright light at the issue. He needed to have a situation where he could introduce Michael. And we read that first book and he was not there. Alrighty, let's chat about what happened in the second book then, now that we're half an hour into the show. This is what happened in the second book.
I have thought.
Oh my God, you're so right. We haven't done the rest of them. Kate, what do you give it out of 5? Thank you for pulling me back up on that.
I have a few different things I was saving them for my turn. So my score is 3.5 for, a lot of the reasons that people were saying, but I want to kind of like fishtail into that. The first thing is I probably shouldn't do this because then someone will steal my idea. But wouldn't it be a great book if, from Kravos' perspective, how he wanted to be this supervillain and everyone just kept forgetting he existed? It'd be like a really great comedy.
That's like the anti-god, because you know, like American Gods and all of that. It's like the belief and their
not even. I was just thinking more like a bumbling comedy where it's like, look at how evil I am, and everyone's like, who are you again?
Yeah, it's Dan, right? It's David. Yeah. I'm the most evil David out there. Sure thing, Dan. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been funny.
So he kills himself to turn into a ghost so that he can haunt everyone, but everyone's like, doesn't even realize that he died because no one missed him. Oh, no. Oh. Avery loves it, says that would be hilarious. I would read that. Michelle says, like Addie LaRue powers, but worst main character ever. Oh, that's fun. So 3.5 out of 5. What'd you like? What did you bibbly boobs?
Well, I love the world building, and I mean, boobs and that stuff is all par for the course. But one of the things I was just kind of like, I didn't have words for what annoyed me about it when I was reading it until this conversation. But I don't know if anyone else in the chat has ever read the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series.
Mom loves them.
It's essentially like female Dresden, but hornier.
And she turns into a succubus.
If you think Harry's horny, oh boy. But there's something in that series that's the similar, like, there's always 50 million people trying to kill him within 100 pages, and it's almost like exhausting.
Yeah.
Because of it. And it's just like, I find some of these characters, not necessarily like Harry or Anita in those situations, because it's pretty much the exact same thing happening. But it's like, it's kind of like the twins characters are the perfect encompassing of that, where it's just like, how did you exist this long being so stupid and so just egotistical and just like a dog with a bone kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's just annoying. And I found it's like, that's something that I found really annoying in that series too, where it's just like, it's all these like petty ego games. I was just like, yeah, I find it really boring. So that kind of stuff, I was just like, oh, not these people again. And I didn't find it like high stakes. I was just like, yawn. Just kill them already. It was super yawn.
Okay.
So I found that stuff a little like, we didn't need those kind of things because there's already tons of stakes. We didn't need these two
pun! Exclamation mark pun!
Characters.
Stakes. We're talking about vampires.
Didn't need to do it.
That's great. You did it. Exclamation mark pun. Kate's on the board. She punned. Raise the stakes.
Yeah, I found I realized it's like, yeah, I found that part really kind of just, we didn't need like 4 different people at once trying to kill Harry.
Then you are going to hate the rest of the series.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Do you find it as anxiety inducing, or it's just a bit of a, like, too many assassins in the kitchen?
Not really anxiety inducing. I find it just more annoying because it's like, you're supposed to be these ancient beings and you're acting even worse than like a 30-year-old, right? They're acting like 12-year-olds. Yeah.
Well, we kind of discussed that in Cersei.
You figure you would have learned some patience by now.
Sometimes we get that where they're like, this is such a minuscule moment in my life that it doesn't even bear any kind of importance. But then you see with Cersei that gods, and the longer that you're on the planet and the more you exist, the more petty and bratty you become. We kind of get that. There's a hierarchy in place. There's like a pecking order.
I guess it's almost like a machismo kind of thing. Like, when you see like machismo things with like, like in that kind of world, like I'm thinking like drug dealer kind of characters, everything's like an affront to their like ego and manhood that's like fragile as a Christmas ornament.
Yes.
It's just, it feels like that a little bit.
What a great simile, by the way. I got very Home Alone vibes from that. Harry. 3.5 out of 5 over here. I like that. Okay. Jimmy, you wrote in the comments that you gave it a 4 out of 5.
I did do that, yes. And you thought I said 4 to 5.
Fortify. Oh, I thought you said fortify, and you said 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I sometimes can talk really fast, so I'll slow it
I
down.
heard fortified. I was like, oh boy. What did you like about it for a 4 out of 5?
Well, what I liked before about the book was the whole sword thing, where Harry gets the sword away from Michael, and then Harry loses the sword, and it was just like a game of keep away. It was just funny
And it
to
keeps
me.
popping up. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It
then
was
like
you have the sword,
Michael's
you don't have the sword.
having
You have the sword, you don't have the sword.
this existential crisis where he's trying to decipher the meaning behind not having the sword, and it's all kind of like based around whether he's got it or not. Poor Michael. I just need to give the man a hug some of the time.
Exactly.
Is there anything you didn't like about it?
Well, I'm not really much of a grumpy person when it comes to, like, I'm pretty easy to please. You have a good character, funny lines. I'm in.
You're in. Love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are parts that weren't the greatest, but I'm not going to nitpick it.
Sure. Thierry, is it worth asking? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Oh, only because I've read all of the other books. 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Because I'm holding my 4 out of 5 and 5 out of 5 to other books from the series.
Fair enough. I think on Goodreads I gave them all a 5 because I was like, I'm just having the best time.
But yeah, like book 3, 4, and 5 is mostly building up the world of Dresden. Like in this one is mostly the vampire courts. The next one's going to be the fairy courts, and the fifth one is going to be a bit more of the white court.
Oh, got it.
So we learn more of, and then each other books we learn more and more about other stuff. Actually, no. Book 5 is mostly the Knights of the Cross and the Denarians, which when we get there, it's going to be like that. That one is a 4 out of 5.
That whole concept I absolutely love. They are my favorite, and White Court stuff is usually my favorite as well. Not in a weird way. I think that Thomas and Dresden teaming up, they're a good combo from time to time, as we saw in this book. No spoilers ahead. Thank you, Terry. Okay, actually, Terry, while I've got you, I'm trying to think of this one thing, that how I can compare Jim Butcher's writing to Patrick Rothfuss's writing in this particular book. Because this book came first. There is something that he says which is very reminiscent of the opening paragraph of The Name of the Wind. In The Name of the Wind, he says there are 3 types of silences and goes to describe those different types of silences. In this book, Dresden talks about the fact that there are 3 different types of what. I heard it this afternoon on my hike, and I was like, damn, that's really cool. Terry, can you remember what it was? Dresden says there's 3 different types of...
there's 3 different types of vampires, but also I think talking about the magic, like
fear,
thaumaturgy, and fears.
Avery, you got that one. Jump on in. 3 different types of fear and what that fear did to kind of compel you. Can you remember what they were? I don't have a physical copy of the book, but I loved that part to talk about the 3 different types of fear. I think it was like one of them was almost like brandishing. It was like electricity. It was like lightning. It was the fear that kind of propelled you forward and gave you energy, that kind of fear. There was like the fear that just consumes you. Oh, there was a beautiful way that he talked about 3 different types of fear that was really reminiscent of the 3 different types of silence that kicks off Name of the Wind. And I was like, I get why they're friends. This is really clever language.
I think I found it.
Yeah, Lisa, read it for us.
It says, fear has a lot of flavors and textures. There's a sharp silver fear that runs like lightning through your arms and legs, galvanizes you into action, power, and motion. There's a heavy leaden fear that comes in ingots, piling up your belly during the empty hours between midnight and morning when everything is dark. Every problem grows larger and every wound and illness grows worse. And then there's the copper fear, drawn tight as a string of a violin, quavering on one single note that cannot possibly be sustained for a single second longer, but goes on and on and on, the tension before the crash of cymbals, the brassy challenge of the horns, the threatening rumble of the kettle drums. That's the kind of fear I felt.
Isn't that from there. Stunning? Isn't that stunning language? I just thought that was so rich. I loved that. J. Bunt Rock just says, I love the word ingots. Yeah, if you're in the reading section of our Discord, Thierry's posted the paragraph in there as well if you want to go over it too. Yeah, Emberent says, what a great passage. Agree. I'm going to pull up the doc and talk about what the truck happens in this book. So, we're currently in the graveyard. Dresden, followed closely by Michael, tracks down the nightmare to Graceland Cemetery, but is losing his struggle with it when the Lananshi appears again. She aids him in return for his pledge of service. Aids him. That was kind of BS right there. But after he drives the nightmare away and rescues Charity, he tries to use Michael's sacred sword, Amaracus, to break his pledge to the Lananshi, an act of treachery, allowing her to seize the sword for herself. So a little part of this that I want to talk about, when we talk bargains, we've just, is it 2 months ago? Last month, we did Addie LaRue, which is all about the Faustian bargain, which is you make a pledge and they find the loopholes to use it against you. And I feel that's what the Lananshi is so good at. Thierry says it had such a great paragraph and then boob descriptions. Yep. Twitching Jojo says, wow, love that. I've never actually read the series. I just came in to listen to what everyone thought of it. And that was a wonderful snippet. Oh, yeah. There you go, Twitching Jojo. We're doing full spoilers, so I apologize for that. But if you want to get invested in 16 books, I absolutely recommend it. It's a really good time. And if it's on audiobook, you listen to James Masters. He plays Spike from Buffy, read it, and it's very good. It gets even better the more he does it too. I got very spoiled, and now every other narrator I'm like, eh. Kate says you can use Leah's boobs, Leah's boobs like a weather vane to see if a storm is coming from the south. What's the weather like? Oh, we're doomed. Sorry, 17 books and 2 anthologies. I think in this particular instance where she's like, I'll help you. And he's like, great, signed, seal delivered. Charity, her water's just broken. She's in trouble. If it means sacrificing me. And I think that was like, this is really, really telling of who Dresden is. He's like, gosh, I've done everything. I've done absolutely everything that I can. Surely if this is Charity's time, it's her time because I've done everything. Have I? Have I though? Because I haven't risked my life or traded my life to protect hers. And so he makes this bargain to which the Lananshi basically gives him a kiss on the forehead, which does heal his wounds, but we don't know that until later. And just tells him the answer's all around you. I would be so angry. And this is why it feels like a Faustian bargain. Because it's like, I need you to help me right now. Can you do that? And she's like, yes. And then you seal the deal. And she just gives you a freaking vague, ambiguous clue that he could have figured out if he wasn't so dependent on her trying to do it for him. The next part is, and by the way, if anyone has any thoughts about what's going on in these particular moments in the book, unmute, jump in. I'd love to hear from you. Charity, injured and in labor, is brought to Cook County Hospital. Dresden tries to get medical care for his own wounds, learns that Leah has healed his exterior injuries, leading the doctor on duty to scorn the idea that he could need medical care. Stallings, Murphy's partner, sees Dresden and tells them that though it is past dawn, Murphy has not awakened. He also provides Dresden with Kravos' journals, which Stallings, I don't know, it's weird when Americans say it because I'm like Stallings and it sounds so dumb. Which Stallings stole from the police evidence locker. Dresden then goes to the nursery floor to find Michael and discovers that Michael's son has been born and that the baby's dying. Dresden persuades Michael not to remain at the hospital but to come and help him instead. For nearly 12 hours, they gather ingredients for a summoning spell. Just before sunset, Dresden summons the nightmare and tries to exorcise it, but it doesn't work. Dresden then casts a spell forcing the nightmare to focus its attention on him, ignoring his friends. The part about the baby, the fact that the baby has had a really tough pregnancy and is not doing well, is this because Charity was knocked about very heavily pregnant? Or do you think, and I only had this thought today, that maybe the nightmare put it under its sleep like Murphy? The nightmare did? It is the nightmare's hold on the baby. Kate?
I think...
Oh, you go, Jimmy.
Sorry.
No, go.
Yeah, when I was reading that, it definitely felt more like the nightmare than her getting knocked around because, like, as you were saying before, Dresden was so focused on trying to get the nightmare to look at him as opposed to anyone else. You know, it was just like he kind of had like a keen sense that it could have been that. You know what I mean?
That's messed up. Like it did say like the history of Kravos. He killed 12 people, and they were mainly women and children. So he's not afraid to go after a newborn baby and put it under its nightmarish hold.
That's pure evil.
Pure evil, exactly. And we don't see many characters that are pure evil, so it's always like a little refreshing in a way.
And never put it in the microwave either.
Jimmy, no baby in microwaves jokes here, please.
That was actually an old school 80s movie. There's nothing to do with putting it in the microwave.
What?
It's fine. I can't remember the name of it, but it was about putting evil in a microwave.
Putting evil in a microwave. Oh,
yes.
I thought it was those awful jokes that went around when it was putting babies in microwaves.
It was a British movie I saw a long time ago.
Okay.
The Adventurers or something. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Get back to the
microwave. We're going back to the book. Clever Girl says the doctors didn't know what was wrong with the baby, but it just kept getting weaker. Lisa says, I was thinking that it was the nightmare because he said that he had his hand on the belly when he had her in its hold. Oh, that's awful. And then the fact that Dresden sort of uses that against Michael, being like, he's hurt your wife. He's got a hold on your baby. I know that you want to be here with them, but you've got to go after the person that did that. Oh, it's Time Bandits. There you go. Main Ogre helped you out with that one. Yay. All right, so it was the baby. All right, I didn't pick it up on the first read, but the second time I absolutely did. Cool. Dresden and Michael go to the Red Court party. What did we think about the ball, the decadent ball in the mansion? And where we meet Thomas. Why can't I say Thomas Wraith? I want to be like Thomas Ray. Anyway. Dresden and Michael go to the Red Court party, suspecting that they will find the enemy controlling the nightmare. Susan, who tried calling Dresden while he was performing the exorcism, arrives with a forged invitation, unwittingly forsaking the pledge of safe conduct extended to legitimate invitees. The Lananchi also attends. Harry swallows a goblet of wine spiked with Red Court vampire saliva, which is both narcotic and addictive, and which he had been exposed to just the day before. The Lananchi tricks Susan into trading a year's worth of memories of Dresden to her in return for a cure. As Harry and Michael try to safely extricate Susan from the party, they encounter Mavra, who is both a noble from another vampire court and the sorceress controlling the nightmare. Mavra plans to defile Michael's sword by murdering Lydia, now her prisoner, with it, in order to take revenge on Michael for killing her children and grandchildren 20 years earlier. So that was super interesting, where it's like, you know, it seems like Dresden is the anchor for all the supernatural things. But now we're learning more and more that Michael's got a lot of history. And if he's tasked with taking down Mavra's sort of, what's the collective noun for vampires? Coven. then he's going to do it. But the fact that they've got history was super, super interesting. In this particular, I mean, there's a lot that even happened here. They enter the ball. Harry is dressed as a cheesy vampire. I'm like, my God, you provoke. You just and I thought that was a little contradictory because he's like, Michael, I need you on a leash. I know that your job is to intervene and your martyrdom is going to hurt us. I need you to lay low. So he puts in his false vampire teeth to make a statement. I was like, dude, did that irk anyone else?
Made me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you liked it?
It was.
Darian?
No, it was hilarious. But it's pathological that Harry, he has to be the smartass. It's pathology with him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Harry cannot take his own advice. You are right, Michelle, on that one. Kate says, and also Michael dressed in a full Knight Templar gear to lay low. Yes. Oh, yeah, he had the dribble of blood in the corner of his mouth. It was just like, Harry, what are you doing? It doesn't say in this recap really that the introduction of Thomas Wraith, but for all the people reading the series for the first time, what are your thoughts on this character? I'd love to hear assessments. Who would like to talk?
I just want to say one thing about Thomas, because we've been talking about like the boobs as the windows to the soul for the women in this book.
Yeah.
But he actually objectified Thomas, and I wonder if it was just like, well, I'm talking about all these women, I guess I better, mention that a man is hot because people are mad how I'm talking about women. It felt like a little, like I was like, It's funny to me that's like,
he's gonna notice.
This is the only guy that he has objectified at all in the entire series.
It's book 3. Yeah. And the fact that he was like, yeah, he's so hot that even I noticed. Okay.
It's a white vampire thing.
And that's what we're talking about. So I think what's really interesting is that in this sort of world building, we are looking at supernatural creatures that use beauty, lust as a bait, as a way to lure. The problem is, though, that Dresden, it's Justine. It's sometimes Karen Murphy. It's, yes, it's the supernatural, but it's also the non-supernatural that he's just kind of oogling over. And you're right, Kate. He's like, and then this guy, this girl steps out, and oh my God, the part where Michael's like, Dresden, she's barely 19. And he's like, I'm not drooling. But he wipes his mouth anyway. Colleen says it's the succubus incubus stuff. It is true. They want to seduce as a way to literally feed. Videotron, hello there. Video Etron says that Thomas character was so early 2000s cool, pleather and stuff. I could imagine the fake lightning cheap special effect. Yes. I wonder who would have played him. It would have been some sort of soap opera character kind of thing. I think we've kind of gone over this a lot, but the description of Justine was gratuitous. Thomas is absolutely a sexy edgelord kind of character. A Chemical Brothers? Yes. A Chemical Brothers remix would follow him wherever he goes. Yeah. And it would be like, heavy, sort of like electro kind of deal. Oh, a young Josh Hartnett. Nice, Michelle. Digging that one. Thierry's cast him as a Matt Bomer, but Matt Bomer's a little bit older, and I think Thomas is quite a little bit younger here. Alexander Skarsgård would be good. I mean, he's already quite an infamous vampire already as well. We're talking like black, long, curly hair, but like porcelain skin. Am I verbatim talking about the sexualized description? Wearing metal gauntlets and I think it was greaves up the legs and a GD loincloth. The Bulb Dim was saying I was thinking more like a Timothy Chalamet. Oh, interesting. Oh, Kate also thought Timothy Chalamet. Is that because it's got the curly kind of thick mop of dark hair and the medium build. Bulb dim, it's Chalamet. Oh, Chalamet. Oh, why do I always do that? Chalamet. Dyslexic. Chalamet. Plus the youth and the moping. So emo. Ben Barnes. Again, Thierry, we are talking about a very distinct sexy villain that's on TV right now with the Darkling. But he's 40. He's 40. 42? 40. 41? 42. Someone will tell me. We need someone who's like mid-20s. He just turned 40. Thank you, Avery. He just turned 40.
Prince Caspian era Ben Barnes.
Exactly. Yes. One of them Riverdale kids. Yes. Yeah. I can see him being played as the one with the full lips. I believe he's like half Asian. And Camille dated him for a little bit. Is his name Charles something? I could see that. Long hair. He's one of them Riverdale kids. Alrighty. Harry and Michael ally with Thomas Wraith. Yeah, that kid. Okay, we're on the same page with that one. Okay, yeah. Jay Bunt Rock's like, me, I'm half Asian. We got our Thomas Wraith in the chat. As we live and breathe. 12 years. Explains a lot. No, I'm kidding. You're not a white court vampire. So they ally with Thomas Wraith, a noble of the rival White Court. They try to rescue Lydia and retake the sword, but the Red Court hostess, Bianca, offers Thomas a trade. If he'll betray Dresden, Michael, and Susan, then Bianca will leave his lover / food source, Justine, alone. Thomas agrees and kicks Susan into a crowd of Red Court vampires who proceed to feed on her. Incoherent with rage, Dresden unleashes an unusually potent incineration spell, slaughtering many of the Red Court. He collapses and Michael manages to drag both Dresden and Lydia to safety. Thomas and Justine and Susan are captured. Okay, so I guess the Mavra showdown, we are introduced to yet another character. Was this becoming confusing for people? Because now it's a Black Court noble in the Red Court. There's history all of a sudden, and you're learning all of this. It's not a she. They've turned so sort of like, evil, and like my guess it's like broken sort of like the constructs of what a human is. What did you think of Mavra? Does anyone have any thoughts on them? Mavra? Black Court? Care? Don't care?
I honestly like her more than Thomas. I mean, I kind of like when
Charles Melton
villains are like just evil and love it.
And that's
like,
Mavra, yeah.
She's not trying to be like sexy or cool like Thomas. Like I just said, I have no sympathy for him. Like,
why don't you have any sympathy for Thomas? He's so pretty, Kate.
He's a date rapist, essentially, who sacrificed Susan to save himself and then was all shocked Pikachu face when they turned on him, too. The White Court are all date rapists. Like, I don't have any sympathy for them.
They literally do seduce you to feed on your energy like that, yes. And it could be anger, it could be other types of emotion, but the easiest and most concentrated fix is sassy times.
Like, I kind of appreciate the Black Court where it's just like, yeah, I'm an evil vampire. Like, I'm not trying to hide it.
Got it.
I enjoy monsters being monsters.
Isn't it weird? Because then you know that it's like danger bad, but then there's something sort of a little bit ambiguous when it's like, but she likes it.
There's enough of that in real life with people not being what they seem. Like, in a monster book, just let the monsters be monsters. I don't need sociopaths in a fantasy book. Like, there's enough of them in real life.
Good point. Yeah, it's interesting talking about them because, like, the red vampires, are literally bat vampires. The black vampires are your, what was that word that we had for them? Your Dracula, that was a great word. Nosferatu. Thank you, Kate. And then you've got the white ones, which is your date rapists. Sick. No, seriously, you want this. Yes, Thierry.
Well,
No, Darian? Thierry.
yeah.
Darian.
I was just building on the previous point. One thing is I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but the White Court, it's in their nature to be indirect. Remember, they being direct in their conflicts is almost, frowned upon. So they want to be subversive and, playing pawns against each other, while the Black Court and the Red Court are a lot more direct and, I'm going to attack you. I'm not going to use a proxy to do it.
And I hate to say the white and black when we're talking about black, white, and red. But you're 100% right. And it's like, we know their intentions. We know that it's just like evil for the sake of being evil. Excuse me, please. And it's like violence, and it's there's no gray area. And I feel like when it's sort of involving weaponizing sex in that particular way, and then you have someone who's willing and almost dependent on it, it grays it. It muddies it a lot. So you're right. It's really distinct with the red and the black court. There's no room for confusion. It is exactly what it is. And then enters the white court and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. Especially that part at the end where Dresden, who we're saying is, problematic, he is setting boundaries for Thomas, being like, no, stop seducing this poor woman who we've tried to protect from the start, who's been a victim of Kravos's for months now and cannot sleep for fear of being possessed. Get off her. Stop rubbing your naked body against her. Yeah. Okay. Shades of grey with the white. Cute. Clever Girl says, didn't Thomas imply that he had a plan that backfired after the fact, though? And I think when you're trying to make ally, and it's like that, it just showed it his true self in that moment. So it backfired in more ways than one, Colleen, in that area. Michelle says, they can use magic too, right? I like the vampire sorcerer combo. I would love to hear more about that. Can the White Court use magic, Thierry? I refer to you.
Only if they study and are prone to be magical.
There you go. I just read Kate's comment, which is, woman just got out of a horrible possession, can't defend herself at all, and doesn't even know where she is. Thomas, what do you mean I can't fuck her? Yeah. Yeah. Problematic. Thierry says, shades of grey with the white vampires. How many shades, Maude? 50? But ching, pun. Yes. At least 50, Thierry. At least. Avery says that I feel like we didn't have enough information about Mavra for me to have an opinion. Again, it was like, kind of introduced in the third act. Seems like there's history. Don't really know. She got away. Will she come back? Likely, because I've introduced her. KP Dubs, we have to get a pun points system in place so that other people can claim pun points. I like that. I mean, you were going to slay that, but yes. The Black Court is who you were thinking about with magic. No, so in this instance, Black Court vampires do not have magical abilities. For some reason, Mavra has learnt and obtained sorcery abilities and is now teaching other members of courts, in this instance, Bianca, how to do magic. For the moment, KP Dubs, that's how it is. Oh, no, wait. Thierry got 34 arbitrary pun points. Fantastic. Ooh-ah. All right, so moving through this book, Dresden spends the next couple of days unconscious. Michael takes care of him. When he awakens, Thomas arrives at Dresden's apartment, offering Michael Amarakis in exchange for an alliance to rescue both Susan and Justine. Lydia, now possessed by the nightmare, attacks Dresden, throwing him across the room. Thomas uses his incubus powers. Incubus. Oh, great song.
One of my favorite bands.
There it is, yeah. Incubus powers. To make himself irresistible to the nightmare, which is now controlling Lydia's body. And this leads to a scene where the nightmare... Oh, I didn't know that. Who's reading along in the doc? This leads to a scene where the nightmare is trying to rape Thomas by using Lydia's body. I just thought it was reciprocated. That's someone's take. Someone wrote this in the wiki. Is that what happened? Did I miss that twice? No. Thomas was using the power to... Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. That was weird reading that. I read that. I was like, what? No, Thomas was using his incubus powers to sedate Lydia because... And I thought that was quite clever because Michael's coming at it with Amaracus and Dresden's like, no, the possession is her actual body. So anything you do to her, it's like the shield. It's the physical wall that's in place. So he's behind the body. So if you attack the body, it will hurt the person. And so Thomas, I think it's clever, goes, cool. So if we've got that body, ideal in bodies, I will seduce said body and try to sort of dissuade the possession by using the incubus sort of prowess to physically take Lydia in a new place. And Lydia's kind of like, that feels nice. My body's reacting. Whereas, so that the nightmare would be kind of shut out in that way. Michelle says things do get really uncomfortable during that seduction, though. She/nightmare definitely wants to go further, but Thomas does try not to. Yep. Okay. All right. Yep. Dresden tries to exorcise Lydia, but discovers that the nightmare is not a demon, but is actually the ghost of Leonard Kravos, who, Dresden presumes, committed ritual suicide in order to empower his ghost to break down the barriers between the living and the dead. Dresden, Thomas, and Michael head toward Bianca's stronghold through the Never Never. They, of course, meet the Lananshi on the way, but Thomas and Michael distract her long enough for Dresden to eat a poisonous mushroom, which will kill him if he does not get treatment as soon as possible. Coerced, Leah agrees to free him for now and to not attack him in the mortal world for a year and a day. Leah, however, gets around that by calling on other fairy creatures to attack him while he's in the Never Never rather than the mortal world. Thomas and Michael fight the fairy creatures and Dresden heads to Bianca's manor. So, yes, Kate, let's talk about this. We have seen so many bargains that have been exchanged already in favor of Leah. She deals in bargains. She knows the Faustian bargain. She knows how to manipulate that. The bargains that we've already seen were this vague water clue at the cemetery where she healed his head wound. Removing Susan's memory has happened as well. But in this instance, they're using that against her. Do you have thoughts on this, Kate?
It's always like these kind of like the hoisting of their own petard on their own petard kind of turnarounds on these characters where it's like he's using her exact rules against him. And I mean, it didn't work out as good as he wanted in the end because, you know, it only bound her and she's got a lot of servants, but it was still just like a really good plan that kind of only Harry could come up with where it's like, I'm just going to let myself die.
Yeah.
You know, show her, like, I would say like tit for tat, but in this case it's tit for tit because it's just, that's all
and
you can
what
see as
a tit. Yeah. I feel like it's in this instance, like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, double shame on me. Fool me thrice, nah. It won't happen because I've been fooled once and twice. I'm now very aware of the situation. And he's finding intention. Leah's intention is to have him whole so that she can use him to her whatever use. And so he's like, cool, then I'm no use to you dead. So I will threaten to kill myself. And he absolutely consumes a toadstool to do exactly that. And again, we see Dresden's, it's not necessarily like a lack of appreciation for his life, but his life is definitely a bargaining tool that we see a lot, or his freedom, or, you know, he definitely uses that. No preservation instinct. But in a way, it does preserve him, which is super interesting. Michelle, do you want to jump on and read what you're saying about his solutions and how Harry deals with them?
It's very childish whenever he's dealing with Leah. What would a 3-year-old do? Well, he would eat a bad thing to make himself sick on purpose, like a brat. And then what would a 3-year-old do? Actually put themselves in harm because they don't know any better. Yeah, it's very funny whenever he's dealing with her and she's like, what? Why would you do that? Like a exasperated mom.
Yeah, but it's like, do you have no concern for your own life? And he's like, not as much as you do. So, yeah.
I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah, he is. He's a little brat sometimes. But, yeah, his intentions, he's trying to get the one up. He does it in a very bratty way. So going through the Never Never, he reaches the manor, but is captured by Bianca and perhaps a dozen other vampires. Ugh, I finished my drink. Whew. Who knew that a possible door to the Never Never existed in this spot. They swiftly strip him of his weapons and his clothes. Bianca, oh my God, what is this person's addiction to freaking... Are we reading along in the doc? Is that what happened? There's 3 people in the doc right now. Are you reading? Does that happen? Everyone's jumping in the doc now. There's 6 people. I've highlighted it. We're on page 2. Did that happen? I don't want to read it because of a trigger warning. Did that happen? 9 people, 10 people are in the doc right now. I've highlighted on page 2. Did that happen? Yes, no, maybe? I don't think so. No.
Someone's trolling right now.
That is, what the? Okay. Yeah, I didn't think that happened. I was like, did I gloss over it?
Not happen.
That is so, who is the wikis? What is the fixation? Whoa. So anyway, strips him of his clothes. They're basically, the vampires feed on him and it is violating him. And he's obviously getting infected by this narcotic again. Thank you, TJ. Well done. You picked up what I was putting down. But yeah, the fact that he is a feeding bag, and Bianca does want to torture him and use him as a way to feed her coven. That did not freaking happen though. But of course, Dresden has toadstool poison and he's currently being poisoned at the moment, even though in the bargain he was able to have the solution that would help it out a little bit. He did eat poison. So these vampires are getting sick when they feed from him. He eventually blacks out, and when he awakens, he's imprisoned with Justine, and a pile of clothes next to a laundry that we discover is Susan. Susan has been half turned to a red court vampire, and the transition will be completed if she feeds on Dresden and kills him doing so. So I want to open up the discussion and the chat. If you scroll down to my discussion points, I have it here and I've highlighted it on page 3. The fate of Susan. Susan is a very driven, career-based person that's sort of somewhat having a relationship with Harry because he's the direct conduit into information to this world that she's not entirely privy to. He tells her how dangerous it is, and he is equipped with skills to combat it. She does not. She does not take no for an answer. She wants to go to the ball. Dresden tells her sternly, absolutely not. It is way too dangerous. They will kill you. So she makes an invitation, a fraudulent invitation, which then, upon discovering her at the ball, makes them in violation of the hospitality treaty. So it is absolutely used against them both. He's invited Michael to help, but now that Susan's there, they're like, one can stay, but one must go. And we get to kill the other one because they violated the accords. My question is, knowing Susan and her determination, but also sidestepping or ignoring all warnings, and now she's been kidnapped and is half turned, did Susan get what was coming? Who wants to tackle that one?
What do you exactly mean by getting what's coming? Do you mean like she deserved this treatment?
Not that she deserved it, but that it was almost bound to happen.
Oh, well, usually this seems like a typical Superman Lois Lane scenario where Superman is usually like, hey, Lois, stay away from this. And then she's always in there and sometimes helps out Superman, sometimes hinders Superman. So it seems like the standard trope there, at least in the Superman
I hear
thing.
what you're saying.
So I wouldn't say that. What? I'm sorry?
Oh, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, if you deal with someone that is going to be outgoing, regardless of what you tell them to do, it's just going to happen that way. Not like, she's getting her just desserts or anything like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's just how it works out.
Kate.
I want to say that this trope with, like, Lois Lane, Susan, it happens all the time where it's, like, a conversation that was, like, truly honest would have saved this whole mess. And Lois Lane probably wouldn't get in half the danger she was in if, people were just honest and had like, okay, I'm going to lay it down. This is the situation. Or Harry said to Susan, like, okay, this is not me trying to protect you. I'm going to like have like a board presentation here because he can't use PowerPoint because it's technology. That
Nice.
I'm just like going to tell you everything, the flat, brutal truth. It's just like all these kind of stories would never happen if people would just be honest about things. Same thing even in real life with like parenting and all that kind of stuff. Just like tell your kids or tell your spouse or tell, whoever the truth. Be honest and open. Don't hide things from them, protect them, because it makes curious people want to find out more. And sometimes
and I think
that leads to trouble.
Words aren't almost enough because he's like, trying to dissuade her so much. The fact that you brought up parents into it, I have this incredibly crystal clear memory of my mother being like, hey, you're 8 years old. If a stranger comes up to you with candy, what are you going to do? If someone says that they know me, what are you going to ask? And I just remember being like, yeah, I'd run away. I wouldn't do it, da-da-da. And she's like, if someone grabbed you, what would you do? And I was like, I'd fight him off. And I will distinctly remember my mother. She showed me instead of told me, because I think telling is one thing. And I want to talk about one of Colleen's questions earlier. But to make the point of, you say you can do all of these things, but when push comes to shove, you are really, really fragile. And you are not strong, and you can be like overburdened instantly. And I remember because it was my mom, she's like, what would you do if someone grabbed you? And I was like, I'd fight him up. And she's like, would you? And she grabbed me and she forced me into a seat. And it happened so fast and I couldn't do anything about it. And I was all of a sudden sitting down. And she's like, I thought you said you would fight. And it just dawned on me how much danger I was in. And I needed to learn that lesson when I was young. Instead of being told, I needed to see it and I needed to experience it. And I think that that's the difference here, where Dresden just keeps telling her, but she is a very strong, independent woman who thinks she can take care of herself. And we hear that over and over and over again. And Colleen was saying people who know Harry might just think that Harry's warning is just his misplaced chivalry, borderline chauvinistic qualities. Susan try to call, and he ignored her phone call. So she was trying to get more information about it. She was trying to let in on the plan, but he was so distracted and so busy that he just ignored her completely. So she took it into her own hands. But what I think is interesting, Colleen, is the point that you brought up. The way that he says it, it's almost like, I don't want you to get hurt. I don't think you can take it. It's not that I can't handle it. It's that you can't handle it. And I think that miscommunication has almost spurred her into action, being like, fuck you, I don't even need you. I'll do it. And as, who was it? B-Rock Vandal says, at least she came with her vampire survival kit. So she was prepared. She did know the risks, but she was not listening to Harry, or the way that Harry described the danger wasn't real enough for her. So with that, Kate, you've got some things, and then we'll go to you, Michelle. But Kate, you've written a couple of things.
Oh yeah, just kind of extrapolating on the point I made earlier that it's like, this isn't a conversation that should have had to wait for a phone call that Harry couldn't take because he was in the middle of a ritual. It should have happened when they decided it's like, okay, we're going to try this relationship thing. They should have had the conversation that day, or even in book 1 or book 2, before they even became a couple.
My gosh.
Okay, this is this world that I'm in. And I'm not saying this just because, like, I want to try and protect you. Like, I'm sure he's seen lots of well-meaning people die in the course of his life, right?
Well, she sees him. She's like, hey, you kind of blew me off last night. And he's showing up with a black eye, cuts, you know.
It's like, that's not, like, I mean, I know she's a reporter and she's very tenacious about, like, finding the story, but it's like, that's not, like, a humongous red flag to you.
Oh, well, I'm just going to throw a little holy water. I'll be fine. That's what she said. She was like, I'm not going to let anyone put their saliva on me. It's like, girl, it's not a consensual thing. Like, if they want to do something to you, they will do it.
There's lots of people in this world who carry guns and still die and did not protect them.
That was another lesson my mother taught me when I was 18 and fired up because I was going out and drinking all the time. And she was talking about basically violence that men can show. And I was just like, I remember telling her this story that I went out and this guy trod on my toe and he like almost removed the toenail. Like he absolutely stomped on my toe and I got fired up. He stomped and he just looks at me and I go, excuse me? He's like, what? And I was like, you've really hurt my toe. I think my toe's bleeding. And he was like, so? And I'm like, so you should apologize. Because in my mind, I grew up knowing that men should be respectful and people should have decent manners. And again, my mum just goes, why did you do that? And I was like, because I deserved an apology. And she's like, who's to say he wouldn't turn around and punch you in the face? And I go, because guys don't do that. And she's like, not the ones in your life, but when you're out and you don't know these people, there are guys that punch women. And this guy, if you provoked him like that, could absolutely like show violence towards you. Because it doesn't happen to you or it hasn't happened to you, doesn't mean it won't happen to you. And I remember it just rocked my world because in my little bubble of existence, there was no way where a guy would punch a girl. Like it did not exist. And so that was another hard truth where she was just like, sweetheart, like this is a real world and you've got to understand the really dark, awful sides of it if you're going to be in it. And it's like, Susan just doesn't have that. She needs a Mama Garrett. Susan needed a Mama Garrett and didn't get one. But it's just this, with road rage as well. Clever girl, that's it. Don't start something because they can open their dashboard, pull out a gun and shoot you. Like you just don't know. And I think Susan didn't get a Mama Garrett and that's why she's in this pickle. And that's why I'm not a vampire. Not funny. Not funny. So I guess the response to the question that we've been getting, we're kind of analyzing why she thought it was appropriate to do it. She's tenacious. She didn't get enough of a warning. Dresden's chivalry / chauvinistic tendencies could have blurred that a lot. He didn't provide enough time or space to really sit her down and give the Mama Garrett hard truths to the world. We're obviously not surprised that she...
But he can't.
What do you mean, Thierry? Go.
There's rules with the White Council of Wizards that we've learned when he's talking to Murphy in book 2, that I can give you some information, but not all of it. Mm-hmm, and she's always poking, like, if you don't give me all the information, I can do my job right. But in his mind, when we read it, he says, well, the White Council has rules that we can't share too much with the non-magic users.
And it's that thing where she's like, well, you didn't tell me, so it's all on you. It's your
There
fault.
are ways around that too, though. Cops and psychiatrists talk to someone in their life about their cases all the time, and that's actually illegal too. So you can like change names and change some details, but like there's just a lack of communication here. And if that meant if Harry was so like, I mean, wizards are obviously magic, so maybe there's like some sort of binding ritual where it's like if he tried to say it, the words couldn't come out or something.
I mean,
and he should be like, I can't get in a relationship with you.
Susan's investigating the Kravos case, a human that did ritualistic sacrifice in the shape of orgies and taking advantage of women and children, using drugs and narcotics and seduction and all of that, and literally slaughtered them with a crude knife. She's researching this, and that's what a human is capable of. So even using sort of the data that's available, that's anchored to the real world, like that should be enough. That's why I think that Susan is incredibly attracted to danger. And even though she says she can kind of like, you know, look after herself, there's a naivety in there that is just, I mean, I think that got her where she is. And it really put Dresden in a huge pickle. Dresden is dealing with, he needs answers. That's his prerogative. He's dealing with Michael's martyrdom, which is if I see anything that is distasteful or that goes against sort of like the goodness of whatever, if I see any violation, I will sacrifice myself to take them out. And he's like, I kind of need you. Please don't do that. And then Susan's like, I'm just trying to get a story. I can take care of myself. And then he's like, well, because you've done that, you've violated the accords, so I have absolutely no protection over you. And if they want to eat you, they are well within their rights to do that because you don't understand this world's set of rules. Anyway.
So is it naivety or is it just plain disregard in just, you know, just her target is only the story and she just disregards all the obvious dangers and warnings that come up?
Kate's saying maybe both. Avery's saying maybe both. She's naive, so she disregards. I think that she got a taste of her career being, I want to say blasted forward. You know, what's that word? Come on, guys, help me.
Propelled.
Yeah, thank you. I got the moves. Her career was propelled forward. 5 years worth of work propelled forward because she released a video by getting, on the ground of one of Harry's jobs. I think her ambition is blindsiding her completely. She just thinks that if she can get an interview or if she can write a story or if she can expose what she's going to see, then that keeps her in her head untouchable.
Saying she wants to have an interview with a vampire.
Nice. Exclamation mark pun for that one. Please. But are you surprised that she's a vampire? Do you have sympathy that she's a vampire, or were you like, what did you expect?
I have sympathy for her, but I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Like it's the peak of the meme. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like she's in a very it's not like she's doing reporting stories on like the Westminster Dog Club. She's like doing supernatural stories about, you know, vampires and werewolves and wizards and necromancers and all this kind of stuff. So it's the same thing as like if you're in the real world analogy, if you're a reporter who's breaking open a story about like the drug cartel, it's like, what do you think's going to happen to you if something goes wrong? Like your head's going to end up on a freeway overpass. So it's just like, I definitely have sympathy for her, but it's not a surprise.
She needed to learn a lesson, but it shouldn't have been that one.
Exactly. Like she needed to see the danger in the same way that your mom showed you the danger, like where she grabbed you, but it's like she's your mother and she loves you.
Yeah.
She wasn't actually trying to hurt you.
Yeah. And it made the point. But that responsibility was something that my mum took on because she's my mum and I'm her daughter. That's a responsibility that Harry really should have taken on. Especially knowing her tenacity. Like, who's responsible for her actions? I don't know. That's a tricky one. It's a tricky
not
one.
only Harry. It's not just Harry's fault though either, because she is an adult, and he did tell her. He did it in a wishy-washy kind of way.
But he said no, and she disregarded.
He's got a lot of other responsibilities, as we see. Like, every day is the worst day of someone's life in his life.
Yeah.
Every week is someone else's worst week of their life. So he's got a lot of other things going on where babysit a grown woman, but at the same time it's like,
who refuses to be babysat at the same time.
Yeah.
I can handle myself. You
Like-
really can't.
like I said, if these conversations had happened before they got together,
Yeah.
maybe it wouldn't have happened. But maybe Harry shouldn't have thought with his dick and been more like, I'm in a real dangerous world, we can't really be together if you're going to be like this. The same reason, like, Batman doesn't usually have a girlfriend because all the kids he adopts keep getting murdered. It's just like that same sort of thing.
Yeah. Boundaries, really. Harry needed to place stern boundaries, but Susan needed to respect them. Ugh. Michelle says, Harry and Susan don't hold honest views of the other. They are the main characters of their stories, and they compartmentalize the other person as the romance side plot. I would love to hear more about that, Michelle. They don't hold honest views of each other.
I think that they have such separate lives, which isn't always a bad thing in a partner, but when you're, not, I think they don't really make their partnership about their partnership. It's about her going to Harry's place, her bailing him out, him giving her tidbits to help her in her career. Like, that's...
It's transactional.
Yeah, it's very transactional, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that except that they both have dangerous jobs.
And they're getting in the way of each other's goal in a way. Harry's goal is to protect Susan, and Susan's getting in the way of that. Susan's goal is to get a story, and Harry's getting in the way of that.
Yeah, and Harry's almost job is to have secrets, and her job is to expose them. They're like fundamentally opposed to each other. I wrote a little bit about backpacking, and they really remind me of people that I've met in the backpacking world, because it's a dangerous thing to do, even if you do it safely. And Susan reminds me of the people that I've met on long treks who are so ill prepared. They're making it work because they probably have a good physical fitness naturally, but they've come walking barefoot and stuff. They didn't bring first aid supplies, and Harry's kind of like the opposite of that. And so, I've known people who haven't made it off the mountain, so it just makes me sad, when you have a common goal or interest, and one person, and everybody takes risks, but one person takes a risk and it costs them everything,
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the goal and the desire, or the shiningness of this goal, the lure of the goal supersedes the preparation for the goal.
Yeah.
You're so excited about doing it that you're actually not even focused on how to do it safely and properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on the other hand, I've known people who have years of training, are accredited, and it's ultimately the same risk, and they arguably take bigger ones because they have the technical capabilities to make more dangerous climbs. And sometimes they don't make it off the mountain. So it's a very weird dichotomy
between those
to
two.
Have that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I really love that you said that. I'm going to read the comment again because it was so good. Harry and Susan don't hold honest views of the other. They are the main characters of their own stories, and they compartmentalize the other person as the romance side plot. Miss Necromancer's applying it to her life basically by saying a relationship only works if you're both on the same page about it. Harry and Susan are just not on the same page, and they never were. And they're trying to make it work for their own benefit. Harry got a little bit of nookie with long legs, and Susan got her story. Terry says, to get back to the full circle, at the beginning of the book, Michael pokes Harry about his relationship with Susan and asks him if he loves her, and Harry doesn't have an answer for him. He does have the answer by the end. What does he love about her? I mean, there's this part where she ripped 3 bullets into a vampire's gut, and he was like, my girl. But like, train her, equip her, bring her into the world if it's going to be do or die. Kate says, unfortunately, aside from what movies try to tell you, love isn't always enough. Chris says that their relationship is part of the plot. He has not said I love you yet, and his friend is asking about her at the very start of the story. A conflict is a part of the story. And then Kate says, boobs, because we haven't spoken about them for 20 minutes, and that is unacceptable when talking about Dresden. Thank you. Speaking of Susan, there is a quote section in the Google Doc, and I'm not sure who put these in, but one of them perfectly sums up Susan. I think I mentioned it earlier, where it's like, relax, Harry. I'm not letting anyone lick me, and I'm not looking anyone in the eyes. It's kind of like visiting New York. So she's trying to rationalize and normalize a situation that cannot be rationalized and is not normal. Oh, yeah. 0 seconds, minutes without mentioning boobs. We had gone up to at least 17. Oh. Other quotes that we've got in here is 5 white candles surrounded my summoning circle, the points of an invisible pentacle, white for protection, and because they're the cheapest color at Walmart. I did like mentioning that it was like the trick candles as well, where they don't, you try to blow them out and they don't go out. I'm like, yeah, that would be such good. That's exactly what you would want for your casting. You would not want them to blow out. So it's like, even though they're the trick ones and whatever, it's like, that's really good arsenal really good item to have in the arsenal. Oh, who's Anonymous Dingo? They are writing more quotes. One that I want to go into because we got a little bit more time is, but I don't understand God. I don't understand how he could see the way people treat one another and not chalk up the whole human race as a bad idea. I think we really hit the nail on the head with Harry's atheism or agnostic views, where he's challenging the virtue of God. And I really like that because, like I said in part 1 last week, introducing a character like Michael, who is a devout follower of Christianity, who uses faith as his savior, his weapon, his shield. Oh, Chris, there you putting the quotes in. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, these are great. This one got me. I really like this one, so I'm glad you brought it up. So you have Michael's just relentless faith and how he's just by the book lawful good. And then you have Harry's perspective, which is, I know that Michael does it and it works for him, but this is where the buck stops for me. How can you see the way that people treat one another and not chalk up the whole human race as a bad idea? We're kind of getting into religious and faith followings here, but does anyone want to have their input on religion, faith, different perspectives, where you sit? The courteous nature of talking about religion in this book. Does anyone want to talk about that particular quote? Kate says, I do like that the faith magic is based on belief. And not like an umbrella sort of thick paintbrush kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, the vampires even talk about that, like, crosses don't work in everyone's hands. Like, but we see Charity use it, and it's, like, very effective. She's a Pokemon. It's very effective. But that it's, like, not based on the idea that there is a god. it's based on the idea that Michael believes there's one, and that's where he gets his power from. If he ended up having a crisis of faith and stopped believing, he would lose his power. So it's like,
It's
not
his shield.
necessarily that there is a God, the belief is the power.
And it's really interesting in that moment where he does say a prayer and he's like, Harry, I know he hasn't done everything by the book, but please don't let him die right now. And then, of course, that clear channel of air comes through and this angel appears and they're like, wow, this is so literal. And it's Leah. And even Michael's like, what? But God. So I thought that was quite funny as well, because it did kind of show that in some ways there's a direct communication, or faith, shows up in different ways. There is this sort of magical energy in that regard. But sometimes when you say a prayer, someone else is listening, or someone else is there to save the day in a way. Colleen had a great quote from Thomas, which was, I swear by my good looks and towering ego. I mean, if you're going to swear by something, I thought that was a really good one. I like that. I'm doing a spell check. We don't want to do that.
If I may interject with a story that I think is quite pertinent.
Sure.
When I was younger, I want to say I was maybe 18, around there. When my sister's older friend, I want to say she was in her 20s, early 20s. She was in a relationship with somebody, and she had a miscarriage, right? And she was very distraught by it. So I thought, I don't really know this woman that well, but I wanted to comfort her. So I made a song called Believe in Believin', because she felt like nothing was, like, why is God doing this to me? All this stuff. And then I was saying, like, if you still have belief, you can move forward. That's why with self-actualization and all those other types of things, it's all about your mind. You know what I mean? And if you can control your mind, you can manifest so many things. That's what I feel. And I think that, if Harry were to do that, or anyone for that matter were to do that, it's like basically removing the shackles of mediocrity in a way, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you for
Unless
sharing.
it sounds too bougie, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, there's something bigger at play in a way. Yeah. Amber and Aaliyah says, I like how Harry approaches the faith magic and such by recognizing what he sees and accepting that it's beyond his understanding. Butcher doesn't try to nail it down. There's space for it in the world, but it's not fully defined. And I think that's what faith is. Like, everyone has their own sort of understanding, depiction, use of and for. So yeah, there is that ambiguity so that you can get what you need and require from it. I like that feedback. Oh my God, we're still reading it. We're not even close. It's 10 minutes to go. I'm just going to power read this if that's all right. Because I got sidetracked with Susan. Dresden's, yep, we did that. They storm the stronghold. That's right. Dresden eats this poisonous mushroom, which will kill him if he does not get treatment as soon as possible. Coerced, Leah agrees to free him for now and to not attack him in the mortal world. Reaches the manor. We did all this as well, I thought. They strip him of his weapons and clothes. We had that really awkward sentence that was in there that didn't even happen. And someone who's writing it is weird. He eventually blackouts. When he awakens, he's imprisoned with Justine and Susan. Susan's been half turned into a red court vampire. The transition will be complete if he feeds on Dresden and kills him. Dresden forestalls her ascent bloodlust by casting a spell restoring her memories. Kinda. There's a power in I love you. So I love you has been able to kind of like pull her back from it. I love you is able to replay the soul gaze that they had. So when it's like a magically imbued sort of like seeing, whether it's the sight or whether it's a soul gaze, you can't ever forget it. So if someone wipes your memory, that's an imprint. It stays for good. So Dresden is using that connection that they've had through the soul gaze to remind her of who he is to her and who she is to him. He says, I love you. The power in those 3 little words have been able to help her not focus on the thirst, not want to transition into being a fully fledged vampire. They're very, very healing words. He's basically bringing her back from the brink of turning. Because the barriers have been weakened, Harry's powerful ghost appears as Susan resuscitates him with CPR. Harry and his ghost defeats Kravos, recapturing his own stolen power. So in the dream, he bites Kravos and eats him all up to regain his power, draining Kravos' strength as well. After Harry's ghost dissipates, Bianca attacks. But before the barriers can re-establish themselves, Harry unleashes the spirits of Bianca's many victims against her and escapes with Susan and Justine. The part that we didn't really talk about was that there's the Duke from the Red Court who has overseen all of the actions, and they've done it in a way where Bianca has not violated any of the accords. They've waited for Harry or Michael or someone to attack. They've done everything within the rules, which is the fact that they've taken Susan because she's not protected under the accords. They have made a sacrifice of a human, which isn't in violation. They can use the sword. That's not a breach of anything. So they're doing as many things to trigger these guys to make the first move and attack and to be responsible for starting a war. And because of that, because of Harry's actions, it has precipitated a war between the Vampire Red Court and the White Council of Wizards. Susan rejects Harry's marriage proposal and leaves Chicago, knowing that her half-vampiric condition would eventually compel her to kill him in any moment of weakness. Terry mentioned it earlier that Susan's been half-fridged. Do we agree or disagree on Susan's sort of future? Was this a love interest that was able to neatly be tied up and they had to get rid of her because of her vampiric skills? What do we think about the fact that Susan's rejected the marriage proposal and is removing her from the situation? Is it fridging? Anyone? Does anyone want to remind everyone what fridging is?
Well, since I'm the one that's... When you kill a main character's love interest to further the plot point, the plot of the story.
Well done, Thierry. Yes. And now Harry no longer has baggage. Clever girl, have you read the series, have you? Or have you just read ahead a little bit? Video Etron said, the author wanted Harry to be interested in other boobs without it being cheating. Oh, you've read most of it. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay, some of the other questions that I had is that we met a goddamn dragon. Can we talk about... Because I clearly overlooked boobage and sexy legs and, petal bras because there was a dragon in Centurion armor. And that's my kind of jam. What did we think about meeting someone who has such immense power that is able to just dominate over Dresden, whose arrogance and cockiness has usually put him in a precarious situation? But a Maude damn dragon. Yeah. Dragon who did name magic.
I love that Harry learns that there's very powerful stuff in the world that he's doesn't know about. And also another thing that I love is that it's not the first dragon Michael meets.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. I love that Michael, and it makes sense. He's a knight up against a dragon, and the history and the lore of that alone. But Michael really knows a whole lot. Michael has been on his own mission for a very long time, and Harry's sometimes learning from him, which is cool. Colleen says the dragon has many centuries of power and knowledge and absolutely schools Harry about it all. J. Bunt Rock says he seemed to be kind of partnered with Leah. Doesn't she hold him back when the fighting occurs? Oh, I didn't pick up on that. Is that what happened? I didn't piece that together.
I don't remember that part.
Oh, okay.
There's one thing that I do remember, though, is when Leah tries to make a deal with Michael to get his sword back.
Yes. For the firstborn. You don't have to bargain with yourself. You've got a plethora of children that I would love because children are delectable. And I can basically, they're so malleable. I can shape them into whomever I want them to be. Like your firstborn.
It's the first out of 7.
Do you think that he knew at that stage, or was that just convenient? No spoilers. The other quotes that we've got here are, look, Harry, it's your godmother. Hi, Leah, says Bob, the skull. And then Leah saying, I don't make metaphors, Harry. I'm too busy being one. Great quotes there. Love it all. We are about to hit the 2-hour mark, which means we're calling it. We've locked in the next book. We are doing, I actually got it on audiobook. I have read the book. My copy is a little bit worn at the moment because I took it to Hawaii with me. I tried reading it back in 2014. I got through halfway and just stopped, and then revisited it this year and read the whole thing. Absolutely loved it. We are reading The Final Empire. It is book 1 of Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. If you do read the audio copy, it is a 24-hour listen. But we're doing The Final Empire, book 1 of Mistborn. Read the first half of the book. Lisa will help us with what that is. First half of the book of Mistborn by your homework. I would get started, especially if you haven't, we've got books to read. Get started now, then read Final Girl Support Group, and then come back to this one because November 3rd, and then we're talking about the first half of the book, and then November 10, we'll be finishing that off. Good one, Gory. I like that a lot. This is a bit of a chunky book. It is more of like a steampunk era of fantasy, and the magic system is based heavily in science and physics, which is really freaking cool. And this is coming from the girl that bowed out of science in high school as soon as I could. The magic system is some of the best ever. So let's get through that. We've got a raid coming. The raid, if you are in the Geek Bomb community, we're going to raid Luscious Lou, who is not only a guardian, but he's actually just been promoted to moderator as well on book club. On Twitch, which is super exciting. Let me open the Twitch. Avery Adventurous says, I'm excited to reread Mistborn. It has been a few years since I read it. Colleen says, sounds like my jam. Thierry said, Thor did explain that magic and science is the same. If it's a 24-hour book listen, that's 12 hours, and I think Dresden was only between 5 and 6 for half of the book. Actually may have been 8 hours for the whole book. So it's a little more dense this time around. So let's power through it. A reminder, the last Wednesday of this month, we're reading Final Girl Support Group with Nerdist Book Club. And then we're going to be going on to Mistborn. Gory, let's put out the word so that anyone who's been reading Mistborn can join our wonderful community. Lisa says the halfway point's about chapter 20. It's 38 chapters and an epilogue. Lisa, you are so good with this. So let's read up to 20, stop at 21. Read up to 20, stop at 21, which was exactly the same as what we had for Grave Peril as well. And if you are planning ahead, I think we're going to be doing the next Dresden Files for December. It will be a shorter month, so we're looking to do a shorter read. And that's going to be the next book, which is Thierry. Book 4 of Dresden Files is?
Summer Nights.
Summer Nights. And I recommend Audible. It's so good to have James Masters read to you. So that's.
I don't know if it works in the US, but Summer Nights right now is buy one book, get the second free on Audible right now.
Oh, snap. Audible's having some great sales at the moment, actually. I think I got Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary, which we're going to be doing, I think, in January. So we've got the next few months locked in. Absolutely. Some are nights, KP dubs. Not all of them, just summer nights. Those summer nice. I'm not going to hit that note. Alrighty, we are rating. If you do want to stick around and give Luscious Lou some love as he streams New World. He's been streaming that a lot lately and he's leveled up considerably. Give him, because he's a big part of the Geek Bomb community, give him some love. Say hi, drop some Geek Bombs. Would really appreciate that. This community is fan-freaking-tastic. Thank you for covering this book with me. Excited for next month. See you for Nerdist Book Club. Say hi to Lou. Bye, guys.